Thank you. Let's welcome pianist, conductor, arranger, Yangan, Yoon Jae Lee.
Hi, everyone.
Yoon Jae has to move from the piano to his desk area. So
Sorry about that. Hello, everyone. Great to see you.
Beautiful music. What did you just play for us?
Well, it's called the Chopin Prelude in E minor, and it's a very famous short piece of his, and there's a very significant reason why I played that. It's often nicknamed the Suffocation Prelude. And Hans von Bülow, the conductor, called it the Suffocation Prelude because there's so much stifling of the harmonies where it doesn't feel like it's resolving. And given everything that's going on right now, I just thought that that was the most appropriate piece to play. I actually didn't know it was called the Suffocation Prelude. I actually just felt that it kind of personified what was happening. And then I thought I found out on Wikipedia that's actually nicknamed the Suffocation Prelude, and I thought it's a very appropriate piece to play, given what happened to George Floyd, and then the COVID, crisis and everything, and people can't breathe, they're suffocating, and they can't, live. Where so many Americans are also just suffocating from economic distress and and psychological distress also.
Right. So Yoon Jae, first of all, I usually always like to ask my guest is that how did we meet?
Okay.
How did we meet?
So I believe we met on Yang Gang Day because both you and I are passionate members of the Yang Gang, and you showed up to the Yang Gang event, which is down on 34th Street, and you had your camera and you were filming people, and you were filming different people in the Yang Gang and explaining they were all explaining their stories, and so that's how we first met. That way, I believe, was the first day, and then we became friendly, and I started following your channel. I was on YouTube, and then I got to meet Nick, and then the three of us teamed up to go to Iowa to campaign for Andrew Yang.
Yay! So I remember we met on October the 5th. Yeah, I like dates. Yeah, so we canvassed for Andrew Yang. That's wonderful. So now, like you said to me before, you're really you're happy that you met me because I'm a musician. And then I was like, wow, I met a musician, Yangan, So there's actually not that many classical trained musician Yangan I met a lot of it like guitar players or more guitar players or rappers. And so tell us a little bit about your musical training and your background.
Okay, well, I started playing violin. Violin was actually my first instrument, and I guess like a lot of Asian kids, like my parents thought it would be a good idea for me to play an instrument. They never forced me, though. I willingly did it, unlike a lot of other Asian parents. And early on, I think a lot of people thought that I was somewhat reasonably talented enough to actually pursue this seriously. And my uncle is actually a conductor, and so I had a dream to follow down his path, basically to become a conductor as well. And so, I started playing piano when I was 6, and then I went to Manhattan School pre-college, starting when I was about 10 or so, and then I continued all the way through high school, and then I played more and more in orchestras as I got older, and there was a time in my high school period where I was playing in orchestra 6 days a week. So I was really into orchestra, and that helped set the foundation for me to become a conductor. And after high school, I went to the Mannes College of Music, or Mannes School of Music as it's called now. And I did a double degree in piano conducting. And then I studied abroad for 2 years in Austria. I came back and I did my master's at Mannes. And after I graduated, I basically became a freelancer.
Wow. Wonderful.
That's the short version of it.
Yeah, wonderful. I saw one of your YouTube videos that you conducted your arrangement for Mendelssohn Octet into a orchestra, small orchestra, chamber orchestra, I would say. And you guys sound really wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
You did the whole thing.
That's my group, Ensemble 212. So, I consider myself an entrepreneur in the performing arts. And the reason why I started my own orchestra when I was in grad school was because I wasn't getting enough opportunities as a conductor. It's very difficult as a conductor to get opportunities in front of an orchestra. Like literally, podium time for us is gold. Many conductors even pay to do workshops and they get podium time. So it's a very, very valuable thing because unlike instrumentalists who can practice their instruments, we conductors can only practice when an orchestra is really present. I mean, to really practice, So the only time we really get meaningful practical experience as conductors is when we're conducting an ensemble. And as you know, to gather a large group of people is very, very difficult. And so I was very, very determined to do this, get off the start. So the very first concert, I didn't have money to pay people. We were just like, hey, come on, I'm trying to put together a string orchestra concert. I called my group Ensemble 212, can you play? And it was a tough job recruiting people, but we somehow managed. And about 65 concerts later, we're still at it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's not easy. In New York City, there's lots of ensembles, big or small, right? And it's not easy to manage, to organize, to make things happen, and organizing concerts, finding audience. All of these take so much work.
Yes, definitely. But the beauty of New York, Ching, is that there's so many musicians here, and there's such a lively arts base that it's actually possible to do something like that. I think in many smaller cities and smaller towns, it's very, very difficult to break in because once somebody has it, they've actually kind of formed their own niche, and it's hard to break in, and then it might be very competitive for the person who's already established. So I think in New York, there's always that flux going on. There's always people creating things and starting doing startups basically. And so that's essentially the spirit of what my group was. It was a startup, and I've been keeping at it.
Yeah. Okay. So winding back, we talk about the music. I want to talk about music more later. I wanted to talk about what's going on now. You live pretty much in the middle of the Manhattan, and what do you see? How do you feel about this whole Black Lives Matter situation? How? Yeah, tell me about it. How you feel?
Well, how I feel is it's very disappointing. Is if that's the first word that comes to mind, because the civil rights movement happened over 50 years ago, and we're in 2020 now. And in some ways, Ching, I feel that within my own lifetime, especially in the last couple of years, race relations have actually gotten worse in the U.S. And I attribute that a lot to our president, because I think he's an instigator. He likes to create division, and he has not done enough or done anything at all to actually try to bring people together. But he has been very divisive. Like when he made that comment about the Charlottesville rally 2 years ago, he said there were something, there were very good people on both sides of the aisle, which, was just totally, I think, the wrong thing to say. And I think that is actually, it has made people who are trying to make progress in the race to improve race relations very upset. But at the same time, I think it has emboldened anybody who has more, shall we say, less positive views on race to be bold about sharing their viewpoints openly. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and it's very dangerous. And so it's been disappointing to see that growing up, and part of it maybe because I wasn't as aware of the seriousness of the situation, but so that has contributed to my overall feelings. But I feel that we've come to a rather low point, and we need to start healing this country as soon as possible.
So, did you hear or did you witness any of the problems of looters and damaging things around you or not?
Actually, I haven't, fortunately. The times I do go out is during the day. And remember, we're still under lockdown officially. We're not reopening till June 8th. So I haven't been just going out just for the sake of going out. I pretty much only go out when it's necessary to like do some errands or go grocery shopping. So I happened to go to Target next to Macy's yesterday, and I had heard that Macy's had gotten looted, but they had already reboarded up the windows, so I didn't see any damage, fortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just too bad, huh? Because there is people do concern about the issue, and people are passionate about Black Lives Matter and goes on to protest or march, and then there's small, I would say small amount of people try to sneak in and to do this stealing people's properties, and this just so unfortunate, and
yeah, I think that what's funny is every time there's a disaster or even something celebratory, it's funny how different people react differently. So let's take for example a positive event. Like let's say your local sports team wins a championship, right? Most people will celebrate, but then there's always going to be that small minority that, because they're so excited, they'll start destroying things. They start jumping up and down on cars, or they light fires. What's the reason? And then conversely, when we have a negative effect where we have an unjust murder and people are protesting, people still find a way to use violence as their means of expressing their frustration, or simply using it as an excuse. So I think there's actually two different things. I think some people are genuinely angry about what happened, and they don't know how to channel that anger, so they resort to violence. And then there are simply people who resort to violence no matter what happens, because they have not learned how to use nonviolent means of protest or expressing their feelings in a nonviolent way.
Right. So we have been in lockdown for almost 80 days. Yeah, since March 20th. So how does that affect you as a musician?
Well, it's been tough. Me personally, as a conductor, our ensemble doesn't get to meet. I had planned to do a concert in this month actually, but that of course had to be canceled, and so we had to reschedule our concerts to whenever it's going to be safe to perform. And I was actually traveling to Cleveland to conduct Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, and after about 4 or 5 rehearsals, we had to cut the concert off just mid-project because of the COVID-19 lockdown. So it's been difficult for me to do anything meaningful conducting wise. I'm sure we'll get back to it at some point, but at this point, right now, currently, I'm not doing any active conducting. And I also teach private students. And so I've moved all the students that I have been teaching that are willing to continue to go online. But there's so many friends of mine and colleagues of mine who are really, really suffering because their main source of income, doing gigs at live venues, has completely dried up. And for those who are not teaching, it's been very, very tough.
Yeah. So this leads into let's talk about basic income. So could you introduce to our viewers, if people are still not familiar with the idea of basic income, and also Andrian was one of Andrian's main policy. Andrian was a Democratic presidential candidate, which Yoon Jae and I was helping to canvassing and for his campaign. So you want to talk about a little bit about that? How would that help musicians or help people in general, or especially in this COVID time?
Okay, sure. I'd love to. So the concept of basic income is that the government or some kind of institution gives the people a guaranteed amount of cash, just cash, and there's no conditions to it. There's no strings attached, so that people would get a fixed amount of money every month from the government or some sort of an institution. So the idea of a universal basic income is that the country would provide for its citizens a monthly allowance on top of anything that they're earning or not earning. And so the argument behind this is that if people are able to meet their basic needs, that it would help alleviate a lot of the problems that we're facing in society. So as you know, a lot of people have been talking about inequality and how the inequality gap has been growing. And so what basic income would do is it would provide a floor, a foundation, so that everybody will be able to have their basic needs met. And I first heard this idea maybe in 2014. I believe I was having a conversation with somebody, and they said that maybe in the future we would need to actually have what's called a basic income, or have the government, give people money. And I said, what? That sounds like a crazy idea. Why would the government just give people idea? And this was, of course, before I had, thought things through as to why this is important. And, I thought, I said to myself, well, people need to work to get money. Money doesn't grow on trees. We've all heard that, right? And I kind of, didn't think about it for a while. Of course, all the meantime, I had been struggling as a freelance musician. I've been able to get by, but there's always that anxiety, underneath. Am I going to make it next month? Am I going to make it next year? I have to keep working to make sure that I have funds available, right? And then in 2018, I heard about this Andrew Yang guy who was running for president. And when I first read into it, I had no idea what he was about. So I was curious. So I went to his website and I, found that concept of universal basic income again. And then I saw all his other policies, because he had a huge list of all these things that he was running on, and they all made a lot of sense to me. And so I said, I better keep an eye on this guy. And in June of 2018, I actually had a chance to meet him. And so I spoke to him, and we asked questions, and he explained to me why universal basic income was so important. And slowly I started to realize, it hit on me then that immediately, if universal basic income were to apply, it would really, really help musicians. And so the reason why I feel this way is because many musicians, especially freelance musicians who don't have a steady income, they rely on gigs. And, gigs can, there's generally an assumption that, there'll be ups and downs because there's always going to be gigs around. But you never know what will happen, and nobody foresaw a pandemic like this closing down live performances for several months. So even before that happened, I always thought that by providing a basic income, it would allow musicians to focus on things that they really need to do to help further their careers. So if you were to, for example, pursue a career as an orchestra musician and you're just getting out of school, having that basic income will allow you to maybe not spend so much time working a day job or doing some retail work, which is drying up anyway, and having to do something simply to survive, but you have at least some basic floor so that you can think about more important things like how to practice for an audition, or if you need funds to travel to take the audition, that and having that, every month, assuming you're not going to spend all of it right away, but some funds will start to accumulate as well. And, even if you're, let's say, a performer, you can save up to get that instrument that you've always wanted, or to upgrade your gear, or upgrade, in my case, to buy more, equipment so that I can start a podcast, which I want to eventually do. Like instruments are very expensive, and, it can, how great would it be if you were able to get the instrument of your dreams sooner, because of the basic income? Or it gives you a lot of flexibility, because there's no restriction as to how the funds will be used. And then also for organizations, it'll allow people, not musicians, but it actually helps what we do, in the sense that more people have time to go to concerts, because if they know that they have a guaranteed income, that maybe they don't have to work that extra hour or two just to make sure that their bills are met, but they can spend time enjoying music. There'll be more demand for concerts. People have money to go to concerts. People have more time to go to concerts, assuming that there's no crisis going on. So once the idea of the basic income came about, I said, wow, this could really, really be a game changer, because people are always talking about how the arts are not funded at a high level on the government level. Because in Europe and in other countries, many of these orchestras are actually publicly funded, whereas in America, a lot of nonprofit organizations are privately funded. And so it becomes a scarcity of resources. But if every group of every small ensemble or musicians, if they have their own little circle of devout supporters, they can all pool together to be able to use that income money to support the musician, either through ticket sales or through Patreon or through donations. And then plus with the income that they're getting on top of their own personal UBI, the basic income, it'll provide something, and there's a lot less stress, and I think more people will pursue the arts. It's an investment in society, because so many people, I think, give up on doing what they want to do because they just don't have the resources. So it's not even a question about quality. It's just a question of do you have the means to pursue this? And I think that's what we need to encourage more and more people to pursue the arts. And so this is why I strongly believe that UBI will play a great role in it. Without it, I just see more and more of the arts drying up, and it's going to be a big scarcity of resources. So there's going to be definitely a mindset of scarcity amongst
and then people will ask, where is the money come from?
The money comes from taxing technology, because right now tech companies like Amazon are making huge profits because they're not paying a working force, because a lot of their tasks are becoming more and more automated. And as we've seen pilot programs of driverless trucks. We're seeing automatic burger flippers, so that if you go to fast food restaurants, a lot of these things can be automated. You're also going to see, you're already seeing a lot of kiosks, right? Self-checkout centers at Walmart, CVS, at your local grocery stores. Also, if you go to a fast food restaurant, many times you don't even need to have a person order. You can just order it on the kiosk, and then you can go pick it up at the counter. And so a lot of these low-skill jobs are slowly disappearing. And it all ties in actually with what I think is happening with society, because many people of color, unfortunately, are in positions where they have to take these jobs, and these jobs are slowly being reduced. So this whole pandemic has done nothing but just accelerate that automation, because I think, corporate leaders are realizing, wait a second, we have so many people that we need to take care of. If there's a pandemic, it's going to cost us a lot. And of course, if you're a CEO, or if you're the leader of a corporation, you have maximized profits in mind rather than the well-being of your company, or at least most people are,
Mm-hmm.
and so that unfortunately makes them give have to make the tough decision of laying off workers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so I think what a lot of people are seeing is that that's definitely wrong, in the sense that the workers are not being taken care of. But I don't think they're coming up with meaningful solutions as to what is inevitable, because I think that it doesn't make sense to hold on to these kinds of jobs simply because we need to provide people with an income. This income can be provided without them having to work. And then what that actually does is it frees people up to do things they really want to do, because I could be wrong, but I'm sure many people that work these low skilled jobs, low paying jobs, would rather just get the money and be able to do other things, like maybe start their own business, or to pursue arts, like maybe, write poetry, draw paintings, play instruments, spend time with family, or to just relax, and automation allows us to do that. We don't have to do low skilled labor work anymore. So right now we're also seeing a huge change in how work is being defined, and I myself personally had gone through a lot of transformations as well, because when I graduated from grad school as a musician, and when I was pursuing this career, I thought I needed to get a job, somewhere at a university or at an orchestra, and for various reasons, it didn't happen. And as it became more and more apparent that it wasn't being the case, I personally felt very, very stressed. I said to myself, am I ever going to make it? What if I don't make it? Do I have to pursue something I don't want to do? I really love music, and this is what I want to do. I don't see myself doing something else only because I couldn't find a job becoming a musician. So as that happened more and more, I became more and more entrepreneurial. So I started making arrangements because I had more time on my hands. And then I realized I was quite good at it. And people gave me a lot of accolades and they said, your arrangements are really amazing. And then one thing led to another. And, I started arranging Mahler Symphony number 4. And then I started to do more and more. And then I realized I might as well do all of them. And
tell us a little bit about what is a Mahler chamber project. Like you make arrangement after Mahler symphony to make a smaller ensemble?
Okay, yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar with classical music, so Gustav Mahler was a composer who lived from 1860 to 1911, and he wrote for very, very large orchestras. So without getting into too much detail, over time, the size of the orchestra, when the orchestra was first born, maybe in the late Baroque era, what were the beginnings of a larger ensemble, gradually grew from a size of about maybe 20 people, eventually up to about 100 plus musicians. So that by the late 19th century, early 20th century, you had these gargantuan orchestras, like people like Richard Strauss, Arnold Schoenberg, Maurice Ravel, Claude Debussy. A lot of people were writing for really, really large orchestras up and prior till World War I. And nowadays, it's becoming more and more difficult to perform these large works because it's very hard to gather, 100 musicians all at once. Even if you're a professional orchestra, you have to pay 100 people to play a work, which is a lot of money. And I didn't really do this with a financial incentive in mind. I simply did it from a purely artistic point of view, because seeing the score, studying the music, I realized that it's possible to play with a smaller orchestra, a chamber orchestra with about maybe 40 or 50 members. And that would have been more like the size of what Beethoven or even Schumann, Mendelssohn, and maybe Brahms on a local level would have been used to. And a lot of orchestras right now are actually cutting down, both professional and community and non-professional orchestras for various reasons. And so I simply did the arrangements so that I could perform them with my group, Ensemble 212, with a reasonable size. And then what I started getting was, once I uploaded the videos to YouTube, I got requests saying, "Oh, I would like to perform your version of Mahler." And then that's how my music publishing business called Ondine Press started to come up. And then, of course, I do other arrangements besides arranging Mahler, like transcribing the Mendelssohn Octet for orchestra. So I try to do like creative work with existing, pieces of music by like reinterpreting them. So like as if a director would take a novel and make it into a movie, or or taking a play and making it into a movie, or something to that nature.
Is there any copyright issue here?
As long as the work that you're arranging is in the public domain, then it's okay.
I see. So Mahler is already in public domain.
Yes, because he died in 1911, so he died over 100 years ago.
So is it 75 years in this country now?
It's 75 years after the death of the composer. There are certain exceptions. If the work was written prior to 1923, I believe it's in the public domain.
Cool. Yeah. So great. Yeah. I realized you have written things, or different orchestra played your arrangement, including Phoenix Symphony.
Yes.
A Phoenix Symphony. Do you know I played with Phoenix Symphony?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you should have stuck around a little bit longer so you could have played my arrangement.
Yeah. So
how could you, Ching?
Yeah, I know. I didn't meet you sooner.
So when were you in the Phoenix Symphony?
I was there in 1991 through 1998.
And who was the conductor at the time?
At the first, it was James Sedaris. And then he left. Then they had Mikhail, a German conductor. Yeah. And cool. And after I left, shortly after that, they had another young American conductor. So they have changed many conductors already. Yeah.
So the present music director, his name is Tito Munoz, and he's a friend of mine. We know each other from when we were back at in the New York scene.
Oh,
wow. So I showed him the arrangement, and he agreed to perform it, and it was very kind of.
What did they play?
They played the Mendelssohn Octet.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. So now this is for I'll make two announcements. One is you can look in the description of YouTube, audience, my friends, and there is plenty of information about Yoon Jae. He has a very handsome website. His Facebook link is there, Instagram, and also Twitter. Okay. And for those of you have not, I don't think it's possible. If you're watching this, does that mean they're all subscribed to my channel, or not necessarily?
I think not necessarily, because I've also posted my the link on Facebook as well. So I think, and if people stumble on it on YouTube, they're just welcome to watch. So I think it's a public show. But yes, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I have a YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, YouTube, right?
Yes, right. It's all Clavier 777, and don't forget to subscribe to Ching's channel, where she's been providing a lot of great content. I've also participated in her live chats, and I've watched several of her other conversations, and she does a lot of great work interviewing, just people in the community and how they're, surviving this current situation.
Yeah. I've had a conversation with another young man, which is Nick Rivera. With
Yes.
three of us were teammates. We went to Iowa to canvas for Andrew Yan. We had a great time, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And we would drive. I usually am the Uber, and then I drive you guys around, and you guys
I was
go.
the navigator.
You're the navigator, right? Conductor, navigator. Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes you guys like giving me, Nick says, go this way. And then you say, go that way. I say, I only need one conductor, please. So funny. But anyway, yeah, it was a lot of fun to be with you. And I also had a good conversation with Cynthia Taylor, who is my neighbor, who is a survivor of a COVID. Yeah. So she talked about that, and then I wanted to talk. Oh yeah, like just this week, Monday, I had a conversation with Henry Juhl. He is a Florida resident. He's only
Yes.
26 years old, but he's running for county commissioner, and he's a great singer. So that episode is also very entertaining. And last week I had a pleasure of hosting Wu Man, very, very, very internationally famous pipa player. Pipa is a Chinese plucking instrument. And I want to mention about next week, who am I going to see? Oh, on Monday, I'm going to have a conversation with Natalie with Wizun, yeah, who is a French violin teacher and who actually is specializing in a method called color strings. I don't know if you have heard about it.
No, I haven't.
It's for beginner. Color string was invented by a Hungarian musician. Yeah, very interesting. So she told me a little bit about that. So we're going to talk about that. And so that's she's going to talk to us about situation in Paris. What's going on? She lives close to Paris.
Oh,
and
so
then,
she lives in Paris. Wow.
Yeah.
How did you meet her?
I met her on. How did I meet her? On like a traveling. When I was traveling,
Wow.
I met her. Yeah, she's very interesting.
It's amazing. You never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, very interesting. And next Wednesday, I will have a pleasure of hosting Fred Child. Fred Child is the senior radio announcer for classical music in nationwide classical station.
Wow.
Has a beautiful voice. Yeah. And then after that, a week after that, Wednesday, I'm going to host George Kolinga, a fantastic jazz keyboard player who played many, many, many concerts. So I actually met him at Smoke. He played in Smoke.
Yeah, I've been there many times myself too. Yeah, I had a couple of friends play there.
Yeah,
great little club.
Yeah, so George is going to put a great show for us. Yeah, so stay put for these events. Now, we have talked about music, talked about conducting. Let's see, what else we want to talk about. Do you want to bring us some insight of being a Yangan?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Why you're Yangan?
So why am I Yangang is I believe that Andrew Yang he's really not a politician. So I know sometimes out of respect for people, it's not very I guess it's a little impolite or improper to talk about politics at work or among friends or wherever, right? So I guess there's a little bit of this taboo of trying to be private, and you can sort of see that when people have Twitter accounts. They don't usually use their real names, out of privacy concerns, and also because I guess of retribution from work or friends. So one of the reasons I actually decided not to do that was because since I don't work for anybody, and I feel so passionately about being in the Yang Gang, I have no reason to be anonymous about my feelings. And the reason is also because Andrew Yang's policies are not ideological. They simply want to help people. So if anybody wants to get on my case that I support Yang because I want to help people, that's their problem. So I really, really like the fact that he talks about this idea of not left, not right, but forward. And you can see from the people that he's drawn people from all walks of life, even people like Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey, who are CEOs of corporations, they support him. And then you have many people who are disengaged with politics, who never even thought about being involved in politics. And how many people did we meet in Iowa that said they would have never imagined that they would have been there, and I would have never imagined, years ago that, I would have been in Iowa campaigning for a presidential candidate. Not that I never felt really like, super engaged, but I did always vote, and I generally vote Democrat. But Andrew Yang is a different kind of politician, because he really brings people together, but not only people with the same ideology, but from different ideologies. And that's the kind of leader we need right now in America, because our system right now is so splintered between Republicans, Democrats, the left, the right, the disengaged, who don't, where either party doesn't speak to them. And we're seeing a lot of this factionalism, and it's causing a lot of things to not work in this country. So for example, we have things that should not be politicized that are politicized right now. Like, how is a global pandemic a political issue? And I attribute that to a lot of this factionalism. People are saying, oh, we need to stay indoors. No, we need to open up businesses because our livelihoods are in danger. It's like, no, but then you're putting people's health at risk. And then wearing masks. Oh, you shouldn't wear masks. We're free to do whatever we want to do. No, you should wear masks because it's a safety concern. And so it's really becoming unbelievable. And I really worry, Ching, that if this kind of this pettiness continues, it'll really prevent America from making progress. And before you know it, we're going to actually see the country going down a path that you don't want to see, because throughout history, let's face it, all great civilizations or whatever, they have a peak, and then they start getting weaker, and then they eventually end, like for example, Rome. And some people have been making parallels about the Roman Empire and the US, and I'm sure when the Roman Empire was at its peak, nobody could have imagined that one day Rome would collapse. And I'm sure 20 years ago, 30 years ago, once the Cold War was over, nobody ever thought, oh, the US is on its way down. But I'm not saying that we are on the way down, but I begin to start questioning with all the world events that's going on, with what's happening with COVID-19, how the country is or isn't making progress, and what sort of are we taking a leadership role in globally. And then with the ascension of China as a political superpower, how does this all affect us? And what seemed impossible or improbable before now seems it is quite possible. And so as an American, I am just concerned about we really need to fix some things before they get out of control, or it becomes too late. And I've also found a very fascinating to read about corporate structures and corporations. And one of the things I enjoy doing, not because I enjoy the negative sides of it, but I like to read about why corporations rose and fall. Like, if you think about Sears, Sears was an everyday household, American company at one point. Like, everybody was looking forward to getting the Sears catalog. And then, if you told somebody in the 1960s or 70s and said Sears will one day go out of business, they're going to go bankrupt, they would have probably laughed at you and said, oh, please, what that's never going to happen. But it happened, and of course I wasn't around at that time, but it may be very, very possible that
Sean,
somebody
stop. Can you please stop, Sean? I am online right now. Can you please stop? I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's not a pots and pans.
No worries. Yeah.
Sorry.
So it's very possible. I'm sure if you speak to somebody who knew Sears at its peak, and saw where it isn't right now, they would say they may have never imagined it back then. And so, I worry about our country and where we're headed, because if it doesn't start to fix itself, it could continuously worsen. And I would think that most people would say that things are not as good as they were, especially with the economic inequality and with the job situations, economy, the environment also. So a lot of these things, that's another thing that I don't understand why people would politicize, because regardless of what your political ideology is, if our planet is in bad shape, this is the only home we have, and we need to take care of it so that we can continue to survive. So for anybody who's denying climate change or even thinks that it's not important, I really ask them, think harder. This is not, we don't have unlimited resources. We can't, harm the planet, continuously and not deal with the consequences. And it's irresponsible for us to do that for future generations. We should not leave them a planet that is very, very sick and expect them to take care of it or to fix it. So it's a collective effort, and I think we as a nation need to rise up and take these issues more seriously and put our differences aside and work towards common goals. We don't have to agree on everything, and that's what Andrew Yang always, and the Yang Gang, continuously stresses. It's not that we agree 100% on everything. That's never going to happen. But we share common goals, and that's to solve problems or to try to solve them.
Yeah, well said. I just feel I don't want to be too political here, but on the other hand, I feel the leader of our country needs to be a role model, needs to be a problem solver, needs to be a bigger than himself. Right now, seems like, I feel sometimes like he's like a child, he needs to be taken care of by others. On the other hand, he is supposed to take care of others, So it's like, it's so immature, some of the decisions, all the way he talks, all the way he tweets. It's just so not a role model.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel. So anyway, how about, would you please play for us a little bit more?
Oh, okay, sure.
Mm-hmm. Would you please?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Inge is gonna move his computer to the piano area. So while he's moving, I wanted to thank you guys for joining us. And I know now the weather is beautiful. It's sunny in New York and probably many other places in beautiful weather. You could have just be outside, but you're listening to us. Thank you for being with us. And thank you, Nick, for your support always. And you have any question for please write in the comment section if you have any questions for Yunji and I. Okay, Yunji, what are you going to play for us?
Let's see. What should I play? I'll play. Put me on the spot here. You always do this, Ching. You're so bad. Right. I'll just improvise something. Since you told me to, play something on the spot, so I'll just do that. Okay?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Beautiful. Very nice. So, Yoon Jae, I was wondering, is your parents musical?
Actually, no, but they love music. So
Okay.
they actually grew up listening to music in South Korea, and my parents they knew about classical music. They loved listening to it when they were growing up, so they shared that love with me. And having an uncle who was a musician was also very influential. But actually, my biggest influence was my grandmother. She played piano, and she grew up going to like a American missionary school in Korea, and that's, I think, how she learned Korea, how to play piano. And she used to play piano in her church, so I learned a lot of hymns growing up, and that's how I first became musical.
So if you were not a musician, what profession you might have picked?
Yeah, I love trains, so the running joke used to be that I'd either become a music conductor or a train conductor. So
That's funny.
yeah.
That's funny. So, have you ever considered being running for something, because you're so articulated and you're so well spoken and you're so methodic and you're so clear headed to me?
At this point, I don't know, but I think right now the step is to become more engaged with community activities, so that I don't sit around. So, I think one of the things I really appreciate Andrew Yang doing is trying to break this kind of mold of Asian Americans not being engaged with the broader community. So I think it's important for us, for me also, to just be more socially engaged, and then maybe become more helping others to run. I think a lot of people are swept up about running into office, but I think running for office is a calling, and it's not something that we should just do because we want to do. So another thing I wanted to talk about was that I see a lot of politicians running because they want to run, and I think that's different from a politician who is called to run. So, and that's what I feel about Andrew Yang, because he always talked about he never thought he'd run for public office, and he never did up until he saw what happened. And so that story was very, very moving for me. I feel like our current president, he simply ran because he wanted to run, and he, being a billionaire, had the funds to do so, and he managed to do that. And he's an expert con man, and so he was able to con the Republican Party into nominating him, or at least a majority of the people. So I think I'm more compelled when I hear stories from people who are running that say, they're running because they realize that these are the problems that need to be solved. And so you'll see I'm wearing a pin here. This is from my local Congressman Jonathan Herzog's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about Herzog.
So Jonathan was he was like one of Andrew Yang's first campaign hires, and he's running
number
on
6.
Yeah, number 6. So he's running on the issues, that, and he's trying to solve the problems that are afflicting, our district as well as the nation as a whole. And so he's actually having a radio talk show. I think he has a debate today at 5:30. So if you get about after our talk, you can try to check it out. The link is somewhere. It's probably on his website or on Facebook.
Oh, he has a debate, so we can watch.
You can listen, I think. Okay. I'm not sure if he got several debates, but I know he's got at least one with the incumbent Jerry Nadler. And I'm actually proud because we've been tweeting, the past week. I don't know if you were aware, but we had these huge NYC Yang Gang has been having these huge tweet campaigns, and they finally listened because I don't think the incumbent was taking Jonathan seriously. So they finally agreed to debate.
Yeah, we were tweeting. What is it called? Young Gang for Congress, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I would like to check that out. Now, Nick has a question for you. Can you see?
Oh, how do I feel about Joe Biden? Excited? Well, I feel very what's the word? I would feel very normal. Like, what I mean by that is, oh, okay, there is a politician who is, who's saying the right things, and he's not
wacko, at least.
He's not crazy. Yeah. And so, I don't dislike Joe Biden, but I like him. I'm not passionate about him. Like, I don't think I would donate money to his campaign. I don't think I would go canvassing for him. Certainly not to the extent that I did with Andrew Yang. But given everything that's happened right now, and what's left, I think he's definitely the better choice of the two. But I was actually just listening to Paget speak on her newest video, and she was talking a little bit about Biden, and I think she made a very important point about saying how Joe Biden needs to be encouraged to follow through on Andrew Yang's policies, and not simply he mentioned a comment earlier where he said he's going to bring America back to the Obama era, and Yang rightfully said that would be actually going backwards in time. We actually have to go forward, and that's not to say that Obama didn't do great things. I believe he did. I fully supported Obama and Biden, but we can't go backwards. We need to go forwards. And so Andrew Yang was talking about how Joe Biden is not ideologically restricted, that he would be open to accepting it. So I think it's very important for us to voice to his campaign, and to any politician. Even Andrew Yang was saying that any politician who doesn't believe in direct cash transfers to the people should be voted out, simply, so that going forward we should support people who are fully 100% on board with UBI, a universal basic income. And if they're not, we should pressure them to do so, and tell them that this is just Andrew Yang I'm quoting, that I just saw his video like 2 hours ago, saying that if they don't agree to it, then they should be voted out.
Yeah, great. So now, what is the situation about primary in New York?
I don't really know, because there's no polling. And there's three people running in my district. So we have the incumbent, Jerry Nadler, who's been in office for about 30 years or so, I believe. And he's done a great job, and he's running on all the right issues. But I think it also goes to speak for the fact that we shouldn't have being a politician shouldn't necessarily be a career, and I think, it's very easy for people to get into this danger of becoming complacent because they, have this position, nobody challenges them, and then they just kind of assume that they'll automatically be reelected, So I think it's very, very important, regardless of whether the person is doing a good job or not. We live in a democracy, and we need to have challengers, no matter how serious or how foolish that these challengers may be. But we need to have a debate and have them sit in front of each other and let the people decide. This is not, nobody deserves, it's not a right to be elected. It's a privilege, and the people need to vote these leaders into their positions, and they should serve for a number of years, and then they should say, okay, it's time to pass the torch. We have other people who are eligible for public office, and so this needs to be a constant refreshing of ideas, reevaluation, and that's what makes a healthy democracy. Not this idea of old politicians being in Washington 40-50 years, sitting around and then fattening their wallets. That's not what being a politician should be. And so that's, I think, again, going back to the idea of what kind of a politician we should support is we need to sincerely ask, why are these people running? Are they running because they want to make money? Then no, we don't. I'm not interested in supporting you. Do you really care about the communities and the community's concerns? And are you going to do something to step up and do that? And it's not because you want to make money. And yes, being a politician is hard work, and they deserve to get a salary and they deserve to get paid. But it should not be an excuse to it shouldn't be a personal job. It's a calling. It really is. You're a public servant. You have to serve the people that elected you. Not, it's not your right to just get the position and use it to empower yourself or to empower your friends or to empower corporations. It's really for the people.
Thank you. One other issue I wanted to ask you is back a few weeks ago that Andrew Yang wrote an article on Washington Post, and then caused a huge echo or question from people and from Asian community. Do you have any thought?
Yes, I do. So I honestly felt that Andrew Yang's response was a little bit weak, or not as strong as I had hoped. And I think.
Can you just lay out a short introduction for people who don't know what we talked about?
Well, so I think I don't remember the exact details, but I did read the article, and it basically said that how he was preparing for this, the self-isolation, and he was at a supermarket and he saw people like looking at him, because at the time a lot of people were like blaming Asians for this virus, and
right.
he said he felt that kind of this angst. And basically he said that, in order to fight this, that we need to be more American, whatever that means, or to volunteer and to help out others and show that we're more American than others. And I think a lot of Asian American groups, especially the more progressive ones, found that to be rather insulting, saying that we don't need to prove ourselves to be American. We just need to be who we are, And so, and then of course he did respond later at another show, because I think one of his former somebody that worked for him in Venture for America interviewed him online, and he basically kind of worded a more strongly a stronger response, basically, to respond to the backlash. And so I don't know, if there was one thing I would say is I wish that maybe Andrew Yang would be a little bit more sensitive to the needs of the Asian American communities, or at least try to understand where they're coming from. I think it's kind of a complicated thing. I think he's trying not to overemphasize his Asianness. I could be totally wrong, of course. I don't know what he thinks, but based on my perception, I think that's because he wants to speak for everybody. He wants to speak for the American people. He's perhaps doing that. And even going back to the jokes and things like that, I could see where it was coming from, but I don't think it really added to the conversation. If anything, it probably took away a little bit, because maybe some people, some Asian Americans who might have been initially very excited about Andrew Yang running, might have seen the jokes as being like he's kind of putting himself down like in a more serious way. So it's a very sensitive topic, and I of course I can't speak from it. And maybe I have to also think more thoroughly about what it is that as Asian Americans, how we I guess what is our role as Americans, and how we can have an identity that is both unique, but a part of the greater society, if that makes sense. Because of course, just like every other group, there's so many Asian Americans of different backgrounds, of different income levels, of different education, different ethnic groups. So you can't just group anybody into
too general, right?
Yeah, to these broad generalizations. And that's another thing I find, Ching, is that a lot of times, I don't know if it's the media or if it's society, they like to categorize things. Maybe it's just more convenient if we categorize people like, oh, this person is so and so, and then this, and like, but every person is unique. You can't categorize people. So I think we sometimes buy into this danger of doing that, and we have to be careful that when we meet a person, and this all again also goes back to how this all ties in with the Black Lives Matter, so that when we meet an African American person, we need to see a person, not a category. We have to see what this person is about. What does he or she believe in? What are his or her values? And if and that should be how we form friendships. And I also believe that putting humanity first, there's going to be people who don't share our values, and we also have to respect that as well. And if in rare instances like like hate groups and things like that we still have today, people are trying their hardest to try to convince them to leave hate groups. There was that one person who found Andrew Yang, and I think he was originally like kind of affiliated with this kind of hate group thing, and then he found humanity first and he left. The person was, I don't think, ever identified, but there was a huge Reddit about a year ago that somebody posted, and that made the rounds. Yeah. So I think it's important to value people. That's why I also believe in this motto of humanity first, humanity forward. And we need to engage people so that they're mentally healthy. We can't ostracize people with mental health issues and say, oh, I don't want to deal with them, or they're less of a human being because they have issues. And all these things, they make for a better society. So it's the whole package. It's UBI. It's putting humanity forward. It's about being more engaged with other people, not necessarily being disengaged, because we all live in this society together. And it doesn't mean that you have to be 100% engaged, but you have to be at least somewhat engaged to the point where these issues like environment, health, they touch every human being. You can't be completely disassociated with the conversation here.
Yeah. So how would you say to people who are now taking curfew seriously these days? We have curfew at 8 o'clock, and then people who are doing looters. And so do you have just a one sentence to these people?
If I had to think of one sentence, I'd say,
I don't know, 2 sentences.
Okay, all right. Well,
Yeah.
I would just say, think about the greater good. That would be the best, thing I would say, because obviously nobody wants a curfew. I mean, when we were kids, like who wants to, you were probably looking for every moment to break curfew, right? Nobody likes to be told what they want to do, but I think they have to look at the situation here and see, right now our society needs people to stay indoors at night because it's a safety issue for you. It's a safety issue for police officers, because things can go out of hand, and when things go out of hand, it hurts all of us. So like when these looters are looting stores, I mean they're looting mom and pop businesses that have been suffering for months now because of COVID-19. They haven't been able to open, and then you loot them and you destroy their livelihoods. That, how does that help? So but and then it just takes away resources. These resources could have been used for other things. And so I think for anybody who is practicing civil disobedience, like, yes, there is, if you're gonna really break curfew, you must have a very good reason to do so. Either you're you know you're protesting peacefully and you're leading like a hunger strike or something, to really help bring the issue about. But if not, I feel like the best thing to do would be, to stay home, because it helps everyone in the long run.
Thank you. Great. So, Yoon Jae, do you want to touch anything else?
I think we've covered pretty much all the topics that we were going to talk about. Yeah. Look, I have a question for you. What happened to your tooth, though?
Oh, you should see my teeth. Can you see?
Yeah, it's barely noticeable, though.
It's chipped. This one. Yeah. Well, that's Andrew Yan's fault. No, just kidding. Well, remember we were canvassing for Andrew Yan in Iowa, and we were together. And then remember, and I that day, Tully Tubby was with us. I call him Tully Tubby. Tully Baker was with us, and actually with me, and we went to knock on doors. I got really excited watching him, and I didn't pay attention on my foot. And my whole body just, my whole body basically just went face down.
Was there a crack in the sidewalk or the road or something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the community's fault. They should have paved the road straight, right?
But I think those roads are not meant to, it's not a huge crack. It's really a subtle one, the concrete.
So you were just unlucky then?
Yeah, it's a really subtle one. My boots is a little bit also funny, funny boots, fashion boots. So anyway, so I fell down and I chipped my teeth. Then I came back to New York sometime in February, and then very soon, the pandemic started. So I didn't have time to fix teeth. Plus, it's pretty expensive. So I haven't done it yet. But anyway, so it's funny. Well, so shall we wrap up? Thank you so much. Thank you, Yoon Jae, for talking with me.
Thank you, Ching, for inviting me, and it's been a pleasure to to express my thoughts and feelings. And I hope it's something that people will take to heart, and I don't know, maybe help people, hopefully, so that they're not just bored watching us talk for an hour, 15 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And we can talk some other time later on, and I would love to play music sometime with you.
Yes, I can't wait for this, the pandemic to stop, and I look forward to reading some chamber music with you.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Thank you, audience, for watching, and thank you for chipping in and for questions, and thank you, Nick. You're the best. All right. So we're gonna go watch Jonathan Herzog now. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.